Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. This time, the Defector. Yeah, going Cold War. There was a Cold War in the galaxy. The Defector on It's All Been Tracked Before here. Also, don't be a defector. Be a Patreon supporter. Go there, patreon.com/IABD. Go there and support IABTB. It's All Been Tracked Before. Yeah, real easy, real simple, real inexpensive. Yeah, just like the Defector on It's All Been Tracked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tracked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome, here to talk the Defector. Before we get started, for the benefit of the video-only audience, because I don't edit the video podcast, I got my Romulans and episodes totally mixed up, and a couple weeks ago I was talking up my butt about teasing this episode, and I was thinking of a different Romulan episode and a different Romulan character. So, podcast, I'll probably cut it all, but for you video people, I know I was wrong. I'm sorry I was wrong. Let's move on.
As I've been saying, we'll know we've made it when there's a Reddit or a BuzzFeed that top 10 errors Woosley has made on the podcast.
I listened to the Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Greatest Gen Discovery guys, and they don't watch the original series, and they'll get confused with something and misrepresent something that happened on the original series, and I want to be like, ah!
On the one hand, it would be interesting to know that enough people have watched to the point where we have some sort of Reddit or some sort of commentary out there that we don't know about yet. And I just, the other hand, oh my God, I don't want to know. It's just, we're just getting, just probably being eviscerated in some form or another. And just, anyway.
First impressions on the Defector.
This is a low bar, but this is my favorite Romulan episode of TNG so far.
Is it really?
Seconded.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Seconded.
I actually ended up liking this. I didn't expect to. This was another one that for a lot of the episode, I'm like, okay, where are we going? Then I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I liked where it ended up going. I don't know if I'm over the moon for it, but I liked it. That was solid.
I suppose I agree. I remember being left with the impression was like, this was a good episode.
Yeah, I really liked it. There was one point where I was like, why am I really liking this? Because it didn't feel like anything really stand out happened, but I was just enjoying how solid and well-constructed it was. And then I looked at IMDb and saw it was written by Ronald D. Moore, who we've talked about a little bit already, but he will go on to write 2 Star Trek movies and help create multiple spin-offs. So he is one of those Star Trek royalties, and this is his early days on Trek.
That's a good start.
Once I saw it was Ron Moore, I was like, oh, okay, that's why I like this.
So to clarify, his middle name is D, and is not like Ronald with a Y, so it's not like Ronald D. Moore. Just
Ronald D. Initial D. The initial D.
Yes.
4, not less, but more. Creator of the new Battlestar Galactica reboot that they had in 2004, and now he does Outlander on Stars. Great director, writer, producer. So Ron Moore.
We just had a Neutral Zone episode and Romulan's episode a couple weeks ago, and this one was, and I think we were okay with that one too, but this one was just better. On my rewatch of TOS right now, I'm on Balance of Terror, which is obviously one of my favorite episodes, period, of all time. But the Romulans, I think, and it fit in that world, and it was more interesting. I wrote down, I like this Romulan because he seemed cagey, but not in a jerky way, but there's more going on here, and maybe it was just good acting too. But I just thought he was conveying a lot, and I thought the actor did a good job. And as it turns out, it's James Sloyan who did a ton of guest work in the late throughout the 70s and 80s. He's got a lot of credits.
He's actually second best known for this role. He was best known for The Sting.
Yeah, and I remember him actually. When I saw it was him, I remembered him from Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. That's the first thing I remember seeing him on. So to me, he's a sci-fi guy kind of, but he was in all those 80s, late 80s, 70s, early 80s shows that I had watched a lot as a kid because I had nothing else to do.
He'll play a different role later on Next Gen, a different role on Voyager, and then he does 2 episodes of DS9 as the same character, but a couple of years apart. So
in those other shows, he usually played more of a sleazy Anglin kind of guy. At least that's in my memory. That's what it was. But here, I thought it was. Like I said, I really liked his work. I like that character, and so he's the best Romulan we've met so far.
Yeah, Admiral Aladar Jarok.
Admiral.
And that was my thought too. Immediately, I thought my mind went to Chekhov. So this episode starts with a Shakespeare performance with Data playing Henry V.
You guys might not be surprised. I have a lot of notes about that.
That's my only note was Picard, the director, !
I love that shot. I'm like, what is going on here?
I was very confused when I saw Picard directing, though, because I already saw him playing that other character.
Yeah.
That's must like programmed himself in as the role, which is even better for that scene. And just obviously Patrick Stewart, the actor too, just like the idea of not like I've seen that much of what he's done other than the stuff from I, Claudius and so forth. Just
he's pretty good. He's pretty good.
He's very good. He actually requested, he really wanted to be in that scene doing Shakespeare. Yeah. So he agreed to do it with heavy makeup. Yeah. So I like your logic that Picard programmed himself in, but you weren't supposed to notice, I don't think, except his voice is so distinct.
Right. Yeah. I was, before they even zoomed in, I was like, huh.
Even with that slight dialect change, it was still like, there was just enough there. Like, no, that's him.
They really went all out on the costume and everything. Yeah, he's a member like the Royal Shakespearean Company and everything, so he really wanted to. They did go all out on the costumes, though. In fact, that is most of my fashion here.
Fashion.
I love the Shakespeare costumes. I love that they went all out on it. I love Data even had that page point haircut.
Yeah, I wish they did that much for the Romulans outfits as they do for the Shakespeare.
The giant shoulder pads is the Romulan look.
What is that?
Well, they need to go to the holodeck.
Yeah, they didn't have the shoulder pads in the original series, did they?
No, they had more of a slimming. I mean, they had.
Well, Joanna Linville didn't have the shoulder pads.
No, they usually had something going on up there, but it wasn't that kind of. I have a coat hanger in there.
Didn't the Vulcans at some point have the shoulder pads?
Yeah, Spock. We'll see Spock, but it'll be connected to Romulans, so he'll have the shoulder pads. But I'm looking at the original series Romulans, and they do not have shoulder pads. They do have sashes. Just something about 24th century Romulans. Every time you see a Romulan for the next 23 seasons of all these spinoffs, they're going to have shoulder pads.
Jimmy, wait. Sashes.
I love it.
I do like sashes. Joanne Linville's, again, awesome. They mentioned a bunch of great actors. I think Picard mentions it. Konark was overrated. Never a great actor. Konark.
Was that a future actor?
He's going to be overrated. That's what I should have said.
I thought that was a missed opportunity to mention Patrick Stewart in that list or something. That would have been a lot of fun.
They wouldn't have done that. Patrick Stewart would not have done that.
I know, but it would have been funny.
I did like his little message to Data, though, about don't imitate, perform.
He said, make it your own, don't imitate others. And I wrote down, that's my bread and butter, Picard. Come on.
I was going to say I know that's a lot of what I do in certain ways. And I mean, for it's all been done. I mean, I guess we have more opportunities to do things that are a lot of learning is imitation, and it's really hard to get away from that.
Well, and I think overall his point is obviously, because I followed up with, hey, I do that all the time. Now I followed that up with, you know what, he might be onto something. Maybe I should. But, and to bring it to a Trek thing, last year in the Theater Let Show I did Mad Lab, I played a guy who came back from Mars who's kind of cocky and whatever. And I can't remember if it was Colleen or the director or somebody was like, you're essentially playing Kirk. I'm like, I know. But I don't think anyone who went to that show was like, Woozley's playing Shatner or he's playing Kirk, either one. But in my mind, it was a variation on that. And I think that's that's what Picard means by make it your own.
That reminds me of something I saw at a seminar, like back when I was getting started and what I want to try to do, whatever. You just listen to other voice actors talk about this, and like an established anime actor. And he made the point kind of flippantly, but it kind of holds the idea of, if you see something you like, steal it. As far as when you're learning how to act, how to voice act. And he followed that point up with the idea that even if you're trying to do something that is exactly like this other person, you're going to come into it and it sort of ends up being your own anyway. I mean, you can't be that person anyway, but if you're shooting for this thing, it kind of ends up becoming
all been
else.
Done, Keith.
And I think it's one of those things where you use it. It's like, I think if you do too much of imitation, that's a completely different thing. I mean, like I think of, the movie Celebrity. It's a Woody Allen movie, but Kenneth Branagh plays the Woody Allen character. And to me, it's the best non-Woody performance of Woody Allen, and it's not a great movie, but his performance, because the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice, and the next time I watched it, I'm like, that's all I can see. But it's a great personification, but not an impersonation. But
right.
Picard's right is, goes to the opening space of Final Frontier, and I'm like, and I know I'm biased, but you cannot match Shatner's delivery of that. And actually, I take that back. To me, that's we know I want to be Kirk. So that's, to me, that guy is just kind of like, yeah, this is the deal. But, Stewart does make it his own. And he, there's the one word change, but other than that, and a couple of words change, but other than that, he does make it his own. So even me being like, Kirk's my guy, obviously, and I to me, that's unchallenged. It's still a fantastic version of that. So I think he proves his own point 2 seconds later in real life.
I mean, to me, it was a continuation of the advice he was giving Data when Data was playing violin a few episodes ago. Where he's, make it your own. Data ended up combining two masters, and that was his own variation. So I think you can do something similar with the acting.
And I will say this: I've seen plenty of Shakespeare shows that they could take that note as well. I'm not naming names by any means, because we have a lot of great Shakespeare in this town.
Sure.
The note being that they were trying too hard to imitate someone in particular, or just well, maybe not someone specifically, but I feel like I'm not good at iambic pentameter. So the few times I've done Shakespeare, it hasn't been. In fact, somebody actually said I played Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing. Someone's like, "Were you doing a Woody Allen impersonation?" I'm like, and I didn't think about it until they said it. I'm like, "Oh, I guess maybe I was." Speaking of Woody Allen, but I'm not good at iambic pentameter, and somebody else in the show was like, "Well, that's good because Benedict doesn't speak in iambic pentameter." I was like, "Perfect," but but I think some people, I always have this issue, regardless of the Shakespearean production, that it's like, "Oh, I'm in a Shakespeare show, so I talk like this," and da-da-da. And it takes me a while, and I think, and maybe it's my listening, because I feel like I always like the second act of those shows better. But like Colleen and I saw a version of Othello in Tennessee, and it was like a 5-person version. It was very, very done on the cheap kind of, I shouldn't say cheap, it was just done simply, frugally. And it was maybe one of the best I've done, and it didn't have any of those airs put on it. I think too. So to me, and I always, to a fault, many people would say I like the naturalistic acting. I like the naturalistic kind of theater, and I think it's hard to do Shakespeare because of that language. I think people find a hard time either acting that way or enjoying it. Like I like the Ethan Hawke Hamlet for the same reason, even though a lot of people hate it. But now this is a Shakespeare podcast. No, that's it. I think we got to what you were saying though. The airs. I think that was probably the best way to sum up just the temptation to put on that kind of persona. This is how Shakespeare is supposed to sound, because this is how I heard these classical people do it in this instance, or this is
Shakespeare sounds like.
This is the cartoon version that I grew up with. They're doing this. So.
Speaking of which, I'm going to reference this TOS episode for the second episode of our show in a row. Do you think there's still a little theater on the ship like there was in
definitely
Conscience of the King? Yeah,
definitely.
I guess my alternate, if I had one, certainly would be I would have liked to see them keep going with this.
Yeah,
I want to see the acting, how that turned out, but obviously, sorry, Jimmy.
That's all my thoughts on the first 2 minutes of the show.
At this rate, we'll be done by midnight.
God.
If we're lucky. What do you think of the Romulan scout ship? What the Defector was in?
Yeah, it was cool. It's all right. It wasn't
interesting.
It wasn't with a slaw.
Variation of design on the big birds of prey, but it definitely looked like it came from the same fleet, the way that other Starfleet ships look like they came from the same fleet.
This is where I envy you both, and especially Jimmy, being able to catch things like that. Just the ship designs and go, oh,
yeah, and I would just say, and again, I keep referencing, so on this show, it's going to sound like clearly I haven't been doing much of my rewatch, but seeing the Bird of Prey Balance of Terror just makes my heart feel warm. And I love the Bird of Prey. Again, it might be pure nostalgia.
The one that actually has the bird painted on it.
I just love that look. I love it so much.
So the Defector's running, and they extend their shields around them. And my question at that point is, why don't they just beam him aboard?
Right.
The Romulan warbird cloaks, and then a minute later, they're like, it's left the system. And my note was, how do they know if it's left, if it's cloaked? However, later in the episode, they talk about an effect that can be caused by cloaked Romulan ships that they read around the planet. So my thinking is, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm misinterpreting this, because I don't know this to be true. I'm just making this up, I guess, based on observation of this episode, is there is something the cloaking device gives off that they can tell. They just can't pinpoint it exactly enough to like fire weapons at it.
Yeah, I think
it messes with the sensors, and maybe in close range it's even harder to pin down. But you know it left because you get the ionization like leaving or whatever.
Well, see, I think it would be.
This may go on my list of things that I've gotten wrong on this podcast, but it's a long list. I think in Balance of Terror, when they hit a certain warp level and they're using the cloaking device, it leaves a trail, and that's kind of what the Enterprise. So the Enterprise follows them to the neutral zone and matches them. So they can't see them, but they kind of know where they are. They're following that trail, but they can't actually see them.
Right.
Because it takes so much power. And obviously the TOS version is a much less sophisticated cloaking device. But
if they only had the Force, they'd be able to find them.
I think for the context of the discussions that were happening in the episode, I think the idea is there's still some sort of refraction effect that we see like in contemporary movies when somebody's wearing like the Predator or something, if you're looking closely enough. And if they're in space, I think it would be harder to pick them out than if they were on the planet's surface, which is what they were looking for. They're looking for like an entire factory or town. Base. What was it? A base. A base. Yeah. What's the word they used? Base. Yes. So I think that they were trying to cloak in a stationary building on a surface with other things that you would be able to pick up around it. It would be easier to detect.
The scout ship unexpectedly blew up, and then immediately the defector's like, oh yeah, no, I self-destructed it. I wasn't letting you guys go over.
Yeah.
I get both sides of this, like how they're having trouble trusting one another, because the defector really doesn't want to be anti-Romulan. He's trying to save Romulan lives in his head. So I get that he can't turn over the technology, but man, what a bad way to make a first impression of, I've defected, let me blow up my ship so you guys can't get any technology from it.
I love that, though. I mean, it was internally consistent with the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
Did somebody, maybe I remember wrong, did somebody ask him, well, what would you have done if we hadn't got to you? But what would he have, did he activate that? At what point was he like, well, I'm going to kill myself if that,
I would assume he activated it once the Enterprise got to him and saved him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was my understanding, that it was more like I'm leaving the ship now. Automatic,
Yeah. Don't forget to close the garage door. Don't forget to set your self-destruct. The incident. So he's talking about the incident that happened a few weeks ago. And he's like, oh yeah, that incident's common knowledge, which to me was the first clue that like, oh no, he's not a regular Romulan, because they're all about secrets. So of course he's not. That's not common knowledge. He must be somebody that knows something. Which obviously he was. He ended up being an admiral. But
I didn't catch that. That's good.
I did have a problem with when they replicated him a glass of water, how the replicator said it could only do Celsius. You don't program the replicator to handle a few different types of temperatures.
Right.
Was he specifying Fahrenheit or something?
No, whatever Romulan system they used.
Oh.
But the replicator didn't say, I don't know that system. The replicator said, I only do Celsius.
To be sure, the Romulans are on the metric system. They seem like people that would stubbornly refuse that.
Their system is so complicated, nobody actually knows what temperature it is at any given time.
It's just always hot.
Oh, I skipped a fashion note. I liked the Admiral's uniform. It was a nice little variation on the Starfleet uniform.
His, a lot of bells and whistles.
And shoulder pads.
There's a great part of the episode where they were talking about the wounds on the Romulan's face and saying how those can't possibly be self-inflicted. They're too deep or too painful. And they're like, well, I mean, that's commitment to the part. And we never did find out if they were self-inflicted or not, and it doesn't matter. The fact that they even had that doubt cast on there was a really good touch.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing you would expect somebody to talk about. And I don't know, how would you prove something like that really definitively?
Yeah,
well, you need to have a CSI team you'd have to have Quincy ME, medical examiner, who could tell you whether it was what kind of wound it was and how it could have been done, that kind of thing.
You know what? I guess there is the idea that you think that it would be able to examine the angle of impact or something, but then again, I'm sure there are many types of burns that you couldn't determine that for definitively.
I mean, I think that's how they figure out and maybe I'm just making this up from TV shows, guys who get hurt in the war, they can tell, oh, he just shot himself to go home. I mean, like, I don't think in the Civil War they could do that, but I feel like these days they could. They can tell.
Yeah, I mean, where'd they go?
Yeah, right.
So at one point, Picard asked Data to make a dispassionate history of events. What the computer logs? Like, I get the captain's log and stuff are going to be a subjective view, but wouldn't the basic computer records be objective? Why does Data need to make a special record?
Are they kept? I mean, have we seen examples of the computer logging anything as far as more than it's being told to?
I'm sure we have, although it's escaping me at the moment.
Yeah,
I mean, surely they have some type of objective record keeping, ship's logs and stuff.
I don't know.
I mean, they keep logs of like when Kirk hits a button and shoots somebody into space off his chair.
The computer's not going to be like those dirty Romulans.
Sure.
I mean,
no. I mean, no. There's no. I mean, the computer could. I mean, there's like a
computer is Magell. She's a bit racist.
Like a black box. I'm sure the computer could log like commands entered into it, but it couldn't really follow like every conversation that's happening necessarily. They would be more sophisticated in the sense of at least keeping track of other types of details the computer wouldn't have access to unless someone was physically entering something into it or meaning to.
But then Picard, as part of his reasoning, I guess he's trying to get a read on the crew as part of this, because he says to Data, well, it's not easy for me to disguise and walk among the troops like King Henry, which, first of all, I'm like, you're right, you proved that at the beginning of the episode, and we all saw right through the disguise. But on the other hand, like, I don't know. I feel like all those records would already be there.
I actually thought when he said, well, I couldn't possibly move around the crew, blah, blah, blah. And then he sat there and thought a second. I'm like, is he going to put on that makeup that we saw that other guy? I did think that's what was going to happen. I'm glad it didn't.
We know Shatner would just slap on a mustache and say, I'm George. I'm George Kirk. There was kind of an interesting little debate where Geordi's telling Data sometimes facts lie, which not quite sure they do, but your interpretation of them could be wrong. But then talking about intuition interfering with judgment and all that stuff about needing that combo of guts and rational judgment, I thought was interesting and a good little scene on Data's long journey to becoming human. It was the right discussion to have with Pinocchio.
And it's a very TOS conversation.
Or the best of Trek of any spinoff series.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Yeah. We can't lose our humanity regardless of technology.
They talk about not being able to have a Romulan ale in the replicator because they need to sample it and get its molecular. And I'm like, how many bottles did Kirk's crew have running around? Somebody couldn't sample and molecularly.
That's what I said. How can it not? I know Romulan ale was illegal or whatever, but still by now.
Well, maybe they had to keep it off the books, so to speak, and they only had like bottle. I mean,
I understand that, but you can't tell me there's not some Starfleet technician working on replicator technology back at Starfleet Command that doesn't have a bottle of Romulan ale squirrel landers. I want to add it to the setup to make it easier to get so he doesn't have to keep smuggling it.
Right. It's got to be bootlegged. It's got to be like marijuana. Eventually it's like, you know what? Screw it. We're making it illegal. We're going to tax it. We're going to make money off it. I mean,
no, see, I would say that Starfleet as a whole is so committed to regulations that they probably wouldn't, that maybe they were prohibited from doing it, from logging it officially. And so
not everybody follows regulations all the time.
But to get into a replicator that goes in every ship, I mean, that seems like something that would be
Riker
really...
would have had it programmed, and Woos knows what I'm talking about.
Hey, we were in a Cold War with Russia around this time. We're just about the end of it. And you could still get plenty of good vodka from Russia.
I was just saying Riker and his buddy Beckett, Mariner, would have figured it out.
Yes, they would have. So in the holodeck, they show him Romulus, and I actually love that shot of it. I actually really like that whole.
It was so elaborate. It was so well done.
If they can,
I mean, it doesn't look like any other time we see Romulus, but it was really well done.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. It almost gave me affected my fear of heights. But I thought if they can do that, they sure as hell can replicate Romulan ale. Come on.
And what happens if you in the holodeck go down to your local tavern and you're like, can I have some Romulan ale? And they're like, no, it's not a very good simulation then, is it?
Right.
I feel like McCoy could have a good line there with, we can put a man on Romulus, but we can't replicate Romulan ale.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Good call. Then I wrote, he's an admiral because his cover was busted, which makes total sense from the clues they gave.
Yeah.
But I thought they did a really good job of keeping it vague enough that you didn't necessarily know what was coming or who he was.
I thought so too. I thought it was a thing where it's like, he's not all he's cracked up to be, but I'm not like, I don't care. I was like, I want to see what is his deal. Because he seemed very passionate and truthful, but obviously he was still hiding something or something else was going on. Speaking of hiding or not hiding, the dangerous thing is that once he's on the Enterprise, he has access to all the files about the Enterprise there.
And he can walk into anybody's quarters.
Have we seen him
unlock doors?
Have we seen him do that in Next Gen?
No.
As far as being able to just computer, tell me everything.
I mean, my alternate episode is he goes down to the lower decks and walks in and sexually assaults Janice Rand.
Oh.
Too soon?
Too soon.
Will it ever be not soon? Yeah.
When they were banning Rami the Nail, they were like, you know what, while we're at it, everyone locks their door from now on. Everyone locks their door.
It occurred to me just now, and just something I hadn't really thought through. So the original Enterprise wasn't meant to be like a ship full of families. So
correct.
I would imagine different protocols would be in place for the next gen ship, because you don't have kids wandering in somewhere and going, give me the secret plans or whatever. Just
not necessarily even the secret plans, but just like the kids are going to go into Picard's quarters. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I liked the Romulan defector a lot. His story where he, for the longest time, he was trying to only be half a defector. And he talked about his daughter, and he tries to set the terms. And it's just so you see him turning it all over in his mind and trying to figure out. He had thought it through, but he didn't completely think it through. And you understand why he didn't completely think it through. And he thought he could, bring himself up to this certain line that he didn't cross. But he couldn't. He had to cross it eventually.
Yeah. And I like and we talk about exposition on here a lot. I like the way that exposition slowly comes out that, oh, you know what? He got censured. You know what? He's not first he's an admiral, but it's like, oh, but he's not in good standing. And,
the fact that he did it all for nothing is such a delicious twist.
Yeah. It's a great moment. It's so good. Like, for me, that really makes this episode. Like, I liked it up until then. At that point, it kicks it up a notch. And the actor conveys it really great.
Well, the pain when you've seen the struggle of how difficult this is for him, and then to learn he did it for nothing.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, I felt it.
Maybe he should lose a technical point for actually saying it. Who knows? I did it all for nothing. He literally said it, but
he did.
Yeah, but
at some point, I can't remember who says it. They let you escape. It's the only explanation. That's Star Trek ripping off Star Wars. When Princess Leia in Star Wars A New Hope says, they let us escape. That's the only logical explanation.
Well, that's when they're checking the speed data, and they can see that the shuttle changed its speed 3 different times, and the ship still kept. And I'm like, and he didn't notice? That's the only little weak part there.
Well, maybe he was slipping as an admiral. Maybe that was part of the whole thing.
I love that they went to that type of that type of investigation, though.
Yeah. So then Tomalak, there he is. Tomalak comes swooping in, played by Andreas Katsulas again.
I love that guy.
I like that we have a regular Romulan villain that's going to do 4 episodes.
Me too, and I liked him. I liked him even more this time around. I mean, I thought he was a jerk last time, and he was a suitable jerk this time. I still ask the question, why can't we get another Romulan woman? But I do like not liking him, I should say.
He's gloating so much.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And
my only question was he briefly lost his smile. And I'm like, where does smile go? Oh, and then it came back. There it is. Never once does he lose control of the situation. Of course, because these are the Romulans. They have to operate on 6 levels at once. Their plan was to lure the Enterprise out so they could destroy it, which I was so excited. There was a Klingon mention earlier in the episode. I was like, why are they mentioning the Klingons? They called them. But then when the 3 Klingon ships to cloak, I got so excited.
I totally missed it.
Yeah, that was such a subtle thing. Like, I
thought Picard was bluffing.
I thank God I remembered it. Yeah, I thought so too. I thought it was going to be a magical, well, I went with my gut and it worked out to prove Geordie's point. But yeah, I remembered that line. It stayed in my head. And I thought it was such a beautiful callback. And that's another thing that makes this up, to me, kicks this episode up a notch. I was just like, yeah, that's not just BS. This was set up earlier. It was great. I
totally missed that. I when it happened, I thought that they had somehow taken Romulan cloaking technology from the Admiral so quickly that they were able to cloak like other Starfleet ships or something. That it
was just a throwaway line. I think it was Picard talking to Worf, like, "Oh, did you call this Klingon ship for me?" And he's like, "Yeah." And that was it.
Missed it.
It was so good.
It was very quick.
So good.
I did have a problem with the Klingons save their bacon, and Picard doesn't even thank them himself. He's like, Worf, you'll take care of that, right?
You tell him,
like they came to your rescue. You owe them a thank you call. Come on. Or
would they be insulted by it or something, or who knows?
I don't think they'd be insulted by Picard offered. In fact, no, they like Picard.
Something.
Yeah, just poor manners, Picard, is all I've got to say. And then the end, my last note there is the suicide note and what they thought that meant about leaving the door open for the future and everything. I kind of liked that in a way. Like there was just a little extra something there. They didn't just kill himself, but there was still some hope or some optimism. That's the total Star Trek brand, to leave that there.
And that was another one that I remembered him getting out that little pill or whatever early in the episode, and I didn't know what it was. No. That was another one. Was like, hey guys, you got to be here for all 48 minutes or whatever. And I thought that was great too. I thought the whole payoff, that last 10 minutes was fantastic. Suicide, don't do it, but still.
But if you're going to do it, just don't do it.
Every time Picard says, I'm Jean-Luc Picard, I think he's going to say, I'm Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federation of Planets. And I just think of that refreshment song, Banditos.
Jean-Luc Vanderlei. Oh. Something about like the bluffing or the maybe trying to go undercover, lying, whatever.
He's an architect.
Yeah.
So we do have a couple guest stars we didn't mention. John Hancock played the Admiral Hayden, and he will return for one more episode as Admiral Hayden. It's Hayden next year. It's a 2-episode part, but he's best known for Airplane 2, the sequel, which we reviewed during our mid-season hiatus last season.
He's best known for his signature.
Oh,
you said John Hancock. I was like, what?
He played Controller number 1 on Airplane.
Yeah,
I guess I didn't realize that was his name.
A prolific character actor in my brain that I didn't realize he's been dead for 30 years almost, which is really bummed me out and made me feel like a terrible person. He was in 10. I remembered him from Family Ties, and then I remember him from a show I watched in the late 80s, early 90s with Gary Cole, of all people, called Midnight Caller on NBC, which is a really cool show. He was on that as well. So
I don't think I know that one.
I think I was the only person watching it, which is why it was canceled after 3 years. But
he also did a few episodes of Cop Rock.
Oh, really?
Huh.
Yep, as a judge.
I missed that. Wow.
I haven't seen Cop Rock, but I'd love to.
Yeah.
Simon Templeman played the other Shakespearean actor in the holodeck. He's mainly a voice actor. Blood Omen 2, Dragon Age. But I don't know if you ever saw the sitcom from 2012 to 2014, The Neighbors, where they were literal aliens that lived next door. This suburban family moved into a neighborhood that was populated by all aliens. And they were hiding. And it was just a really goofy show. I really liked it. And he was the lead alien. ABC, I think. Okay. He was the lead alien whose name was Larry Bird because they all took Earth names from like famous athletes. So then his wife was Jackie Joyner Kersee.
That's good.
So it's a funny show. Check it out. It's kind of dumb. It only went 2 seasons, but I really liked it. And I love that was him. I was like, oh, Simon Templeton. It was also directed by Robert Scheer, who's one of our regular Trek directors. Enough said about that. Mm-hmm. Did you have an alternate episode, Stephen?
I do. Mine was that our guy doesn't commit suicide. And I'm going to reference another. While we're doing all this 80s stuff, we called Moscow on the Hudson with Robin Williams. He doesn't play the defector, but he plays a defector from the Moscow circus. I should know the full name of the famous Russian circus, Moscow circus. But he defects in Bloomingdale's in New York City, and then it's kind of his journey after that. So I think it would have been interesting to see what his journey would have been in the Federation and dealing with what he's done, and it didn't work out. But can he assimilate? Is there a life for him? And because I think that's something all defectors go through. And in Moscow on the Hudson, it does have a few laughs, but it's one of Robin Williams' serious roles, and he's really good in it.
Wesley Annoyance, scale of 1 to 10.
I give him a 1.
Was he in it? I'm trying to remember where.
He wasn't in it. He was credit only. So he's a 0.
Yeah.
He's a non-rated. I just wanted to see if you guys noticed. No,
He wasn't in, right?
who was your annoyance of the week? This is a tough one. There's no obvious annoying character.
He was so good, yeah.
I'm going to go with Michael Williams, which was the character Patrick Stewart played in the holodeck. Not that I really found him annoying, but just like, I don't know. I have no other options.
I'm going to go, and this is unfair too. I think you make a good point, Jimmy. It's a hard one this week. I'm going to go with Jordy for his long and winding, doubling back on itself speech about, well, you got to follow your gut, except sometimes you don't. Oh, thanks a lot, Jordy. Thanks a lot.
That's a fair one.
Hey, by the way, any tips on women?
Oh my God.
God.
I think I'll go with the other actor in the holodeck for questioning the king.
Oh, I just talked about how much I liked him. Nobody went with the Romulan that gloated. Interesting.
God, he's a lot of fun. I like the idea. Yeah, going back to the discussion, I like the idea of having
a regular antagonist.
Yeah, well, more of the Game of Thrones style of you win some, you lose some. Mm-hmm. We kind of get into like a character being amusing or interesting in and of himself without it necessarily having to be like this slimy, hated kind of villain thing.
I'll tell you what, he's my third favorite Romulan commander right now.
Of three?
I feel like, wasn't there another one in one of a dull one in one of those season enders? Yeah. The Romulans are back, but who cares?
I guess I like the cerebral villains when they can when they can pull that off.
Yeah.
That's why the Cardassians just amuse the hell out of me. Before that, just that smarmy kind of the smugness about what they do, but it isn't.
And the fact that one of them married Kanye, man, that just bought. Yeah.
I was like, wait, you! Oh my God! For like a second, you got me. I was like, what? Oh, I can't believe that.
I'm going to have such a hard time as we go through all of Stein saying Cardassian instead of Kardashian.
Yeah.
Hopefully watching the Cardassians a bunch will remind me how to say it. Anybody going to change their crush of Star Trek this week?
No.
No crushes on the Defector?
Nah.
He's pretty sexy. No, I'm gonna stay stolid as well. But
I will say that I really did admire him in the character, just especially toward the end when he really got to the meat of it. I loved it.
I was kind of disappointed he died at the end, and yet it was such a good story. I can't complain.
Yeah.
So as we're ranking this, let's start at the top. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I think so.
Number one for the season right now is Who Watches the Watchers, which is the Proto-Vulcans.
I'm going to say
versus Vulcan.
I loved it. It's number 4.
I'd say there's an argument to be made that this should be number 1. I'm not going to fight you too hard if you want it number 2.
I thought I might be the only one, but I was going to say this is my favorite.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's so weird when you come to things like that. I don't know what I thought at the time. I wouldn't have thought to myself, this is the best one. It's hard to argue one way or the other whether it should,
I feel like season 3 has not had that strong a start, honestly. Season 2 was so good.
Well, one is at the bottom, so.
I know there's some really amazing episodes coming up in season 3, so I'm not worried. I feel like the season started a little slow, a little shaky.
And I think this episode, not only all the things we said we liked about it, but there was no element to me of like over the topness to this.
Yeah.
It was a solid episode. And like I said, I don't know if I loved it, but it's still my favorite so far. And maybe that points to some of the other. And we haven't. Maybe last week's we really hated. A couple of them I hate's a strong word. We just didn't like them.
No, that's a good way of putting it. The over the top. I mean, it's like I think that's a hallmark of when they know they have a strong enough story element that they just let it happen. Mm-hmm. The conversations are just there. They know that the discussions are kind of going to be the meat of it in and of itself, and it's enough.
And we always get into this talk every Neutral Zone episode about, we might start a war, this or that. And that conversation was happening. And they use those words like, well, we got to take our, we got to be careful. We might start a war. But I felt the gravity, but I didn't feel like I was punched with it. It was more, hey, okay, that makes sense. I actually punched isn't the right word. Beaten over the head with it like, hey, this could be a war. This is good. It's like, nope. And this is the way you want your flagship of the Starfleet to handle it.
Right.
That's who you want out there.
Right.
So Stephen and I both have ranked number 1. Keith, would you put it below or above the Proto-Vulcans?
They're pretty close in certain ways, aren't they? I really thought,
Yeah, they're both got great episodes.
I mean, as you said, that there's probably a lot more to come. I can't really see the point of quibbling over this one. Really, I mean, it's close enough that I wouldn't mind it going at the top. So,
okay, yeah, the one below Who Watches the Watchers is The Price, and I know it doesn't deserve to be below The Price. Next week, though, not necessarily one of the best episodes of Next Gen, I don't think. It's The Hunted. Investigating a planet applying for membership into the Federation, the crew of the Enterprise finds a group of inhabitants who used to be soldiers, but now fight for their very existence.
Sounds like the...
Don't remember this one, but I do see James Cromwell's in it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he did one of the Star Trek movies, so it's a different character, obviously, but that I didn't realize he guest starred. I love James Cromwell, and O'Brien's back, so those two things alone, I'm interested.
All right.
Until then, live long.
Careful when you defect and prosper.
I'm going to go beyond the greatest gen now, so you guys are on your own. They wouldn't take me.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?